You can study and get the content down, but the writing is an entirely different set of skills that sometimes teachers at school don't always, a history teacher is not necessarily a writing teacher, but I happen to be both a history teacher and a writing teacher. And that's not to say that other teachers can't do it. It's just I do have both sets of skills. And so the main focus is on making a good thesis or topic sentence. And that is something that's tricky for a lot of people who maybe if they haven't taken a composition class before, they don't necessarily know, they're not confident in their ability to do a good thesis. So that's usually the first thing that we study, and we study that in terms of writing the short answer questions, because the short answer questions are just basically writing a good thesis in response to a very simple, just give a thesis in response to this question. And then from that, we move on to the LEQ, the long essay question. And the long essay question doesn't have the documents like the DBQ. And so then from building up from the SAQ into the LEQ is constructing an essay, having a thesis in your introduction, and then each body paragraph has its own topic sentence as a thesis, an individual supporting thesis. And then once we've mastered the LEQ, we move on to the DBQ, where it's very similar to the LEQ, but they give you the evidence that you need. So if, like I always say, is if you can write an LEQ, you can write a DBQ. So we make sure that, each step of the way, you're building up on top of what you already learned in the previous study. And by the time we get done, everybody's pretty good at all three of them, because the practice at each step of the way improves the writing on each other step. And students they always turn out better. I don't think I've ever had a student who didn't improve their writing from taking the class. I don't say that as bragging. I can't think of an exception to that phenomenon. Oh, and also we focus clearly on what the AP guidelines are. So using exactly what the grading guidelines are for the AP will also, everybody will master and memorize exactly what points they need to ensure that you can get a 7 on the essay. I'm not guaranteeing a 7. It's actually quite challenging to get a 7. But the good news is that you don't need a 7 to get a 5 on the overall test. We'll give you all the tools that you need to get a 7. That being said, it is quite hard. But if you get a 6 on your DBQ and your LEQ, you're gonna get a 5. Like, as long as you don't do badly on the multiple choice, getting a 6 is more than enough to ensure that you get a 5 on the overall exam. So even if you don't get up to that 7 level, even if you're starting really low without a lot of essay experience, we'll get you aiming at the 7. And even if you don't get there, it still works out for you. It's actually 2 things, the Persia GT timeline. The Persia GT it's an acronym that stands for politics, economics, religion, society, ideas, and art, geography, and technology. And it seems like a lot, but it's actually a really helpful way to divide up the amount of information that's available, because if you kind of just learn from the textbook and you learn without a note-taking system in mind, it's easy to lose track of the information. And the Persia GT component allows you to organize information in a way that is useful and sticks in your mind. And then combine that with the timeline, and you've got the chronology is one of the most important things that you need to make sure that you can get cause and effect and change in continuity and comparison and contrast right, because you got to know what happens before and what happens after something. It's not necessarily so important to memorize dates. Like, some dates are going to be useful, but they're only useful because they tell you what happened first and what happened second. So the Persia GT timeline, the students will build together collaboratively a great big compendium of notes And so everybody's efforts will work with everybody else's efforts. And as we're filling in this timeline of notes about Persia GT, then you have this resource that you can come back to and use as a study guide. And so with that, it's to not only serve as a study guide, and but it also serves as a note-taking method, and so that it's a foundation for any new information. You can put it in context in relationship with everything else. As far as materials, students are going to need to get the Prince and Review Guide or the Barron's Guide. We'll pick one of the practice tests, because there's not a lot of practice tests that are available. So we will need, in order to get the practice tests, we will need one guidebook, probably Barron's. Barron's is usually the best for history things. I say probably just because some students may have already gotten into it. So if someone's already done it, then we could pick a different one so that students aren't repeating. But that will be the only purchase that students have to do. I'll provide the textbook material, supplementary material. So the only thing we'll need is the guidebook. And then along with that, as far as homework, between every class, we'll have a reading and note-taking component, the building of the timeline, the Persia GT timeline. And then I'm also going to provide particular texts going along with each test. So if it's APUSH, I've got a book that I like to use a small amount of supplementary reading for each test. And then there's always a writing component. So from the very beginning, we're going to work on the writing and make sure that there's a strong focus on the writing throughout the entire class. So like I said, we'll start off with the SAQ. Once that's mastered, we'll move on to the LEQ. And once that's mastered, we'll move on to the DBQ. It's a significant amount of homework, but if you're already taking the class in school, some of it may be remedial. Some of it may be what you already know. It's a review, so you won't need to do a ton more reading because you've already done some of the reading in class, and you can just go back and review by pulling out the notes. Reading and writing all together, probably about an hour of work. And then reading and writing together about an hour of work. If you're starting out cold, it'll probably be 90 minutes of homework, maybe a little bit more. But if you're reviewing the first 6 months, then it won't be more than an hour, I would say. Of course, it's up to you. If you want to put in more work, it's always appreciated.
So why is that a sequence? Why do you start with a short response, then move on to long response, then DBQ?
The fundamental unit of human communication is not the word or the sentence, but rather the paragraph. So an SAQ is the building block of a paragraph. You don't even have to write a full paragraph for the SAQ. You can do it in 1 or 2 sentences to do it completely. But if you can do an SAQ well, then that gives you a foundation to write a paragraph well. And once you write the paragraph well, then you can do the LEQ. So once we master the LEQ, then the DBQ is very similar to the LEQ, except you're using evidence that they give you. So having mastered an LEQ, it's a very simple process to just slightly tweak what you're doing with the LEQ to incorporate the DBQ. And so it makes sense to end with, even though the DBQ is the thing that people are most frightened of, if you work, the smaller scale to the larger scale, it actually isn't that much work. If you master the LEQ, mastering the DBQ is not too difficult. So that's why I do it that way. A lot of students take these history classes somewhat earlier on in their high school career. And so if they're still a freshman or a sophomore, they've had a lot less experience with essay writing. And so they're coming into what is intended to be like a junior/senior level writing experience course. And so, they just don't have the experience. So, and a benefit of these classes is the writing instruction that I'm giving here is actually applicable to any essay writing that you're going to do in any class. Not just history. But so like going back to why students struggle with it. Writing is hard, and a lot of teachers aren't very good at writing teaching because it's an entirely other set of skill. And I don't mean to rag on other teachers. Like the AP is kind of cruel in that way to teachers because it forces them to both be a content teacher in terms of history and a writing instructor as well. Because the teacher might know about, like, they might fully understand about comparison and contrast or changing continuity and totally blanking on the third one. I always do that when I got a list. There's always one I forget. Changing contrast, comparison, and changing continuity, comparison and contrast, and cause and effect, the easy one. Yeah, cause and effect. And so they might understand that, but they might not really understand how to make a good paragraph that really reflects that historical reasoning. So, but I've been teaching AP Lang and Comp. I've been teaching AP History for years. I've been doing all of these. So like I have multiple hats that I wear and that I've got extensive experience in. So I'm able to combine both. And that's one of my strengths as an instructor, I'd say. So reviewing this, yeah, we review the student essays. My preferred method of review is workshopping, because when students do an essay, they make mistakes and everybody tends to make the same mistakes. So when we workshop, and this has shown lots of results, like this works very well, is as we go through everybody's essays, we see the mistakes that people make and that could repeat. And so when you see someone else getting corrected, you realize, oh, I kind of do that too. And it's much more effective to see it in real time than to see like just like, and this is something I run into as a tutor, as a writing instructor. When a student brings in an essay and they see the teacher's comments, they're like, I don't understand what my teacher's comment means here. So I will be doing individual feedback on some of the essays. I won't be doing individual feedback on all of the essays, but our primary tool, our primary action for correcting is through workshopping. And that way everybody gets on the same page. It also provides a certain amount of peer pressure because, you know, you don't want to be the one who is getting all of the attention because you have the worst essay. Like, it's a good motivator too. And so how do we know that the students have mastered skills? So there's certain, you know, there's structure, right? Like just the simple structure of introduction, body, conclusion. There's the topic sentence and the thesis that needs to be mastered. There's the use of evidence and the analysis of evidence. All of these things go towards points in the rubric. And we know that the students mastered the writing skills when those things are present. Through the work in class, we'll be able to see easily when these things are missing, and especially through repetition, through grading other people's essays, you'll be able to see weaknesses in their writing, and then you'll be able to see weaknesses in your own. And we'll also be looking at previous papers as well. So we'll provide examples of essays that have been graded 7, essays that have been graded 6, and so on. So we'll be able to compare and contrast with previously graded essays, officially graded essays that are released by the College Board. All of that together results in students regularly getting good marks on their essays, 6 and 7. If you talk to a history grader, like an official College Board history grader, 7s are surprisingly rare. They don't like giving out 7s. It's different than even the SAT essay used to be. So but again, that's okay. It's not a percentage thing for the AP courses to get a 5. Our primary goal is to get you only missing about maximum 10 on the multiple choice, and then getting 5 or higher on the essays and really nailing the short answer questions. So if you nail the short answer questions, which are the easiest place to pick up points, and you get 5 or higher on the essay, then you can get a 5. Like, it's just that simple. And we provide everything that you need to get there. If you put in the effort, you're going to get a 5.
So are you saying that writing technique for a push, AP World, and AP Euro are quite similar?
Two identical. Yeah, I can't even think of. I don't like to be absolute about anything, but in that particular regard, yes, they're identical. The grading rubrics, it's like even on the website, it's like for all history writing, it's the same across all tests. And if we've got students who are younger, maybe in middle school, I don't know what age everybody is, but if people are starting out early, it's one of the benefits of the history courses actually is that if you take, say, like in order, you maybe go like AP World, AP Euro, AP APUSH, then they all overlap and the skills overlap. So you can pick up 3 APs with a minimal amount of work, honestly. And I would even throw AP Art History in there too, because it's something that even if your school doesn't offer it, if you've got the time and motivation, AP Art History is not that difficult of an AP to pick up. If you have the time and motivation, I'm certainly always helping. And that doesn't require it doesn't require too much writing. And so it's really just a matter of kind of a flashcards, really. So I recommend it to anybody to go. I would even start with AP Art History. I've had 8th graders get 5s on AP Art History. That a lot of students forget what happened in, September of last year. So it's extremely useful to almost required to go back and start at the beginning and review before the test. I don't know how many students who come in for like a one-on-one session right before the test, maybe 2 weeks before the test, and they're like, I don't remember anything from the first 5 units because that was last semester, and we spent so much of this semester talking about like the progressive era or something else, and I've completely forgotten like the very beginning. So in terms of fitting in with your coursework, there's going to be the review component, absolutely, but then we're going to catch up with your coursework. And then that also serves as supplementary study, so it can double as extra work for what you're working in class. By the time the test comes around, we're covering what you already covered in class, but we're also covering what you have been covering in class currently. And a lot of times we get ahead of the classes because some classes don't even get to the end of the book to the end of the curriculum by the end of the semester. So we're always sure to cover everything, A to Z from whichever curriculum it is to the end. You won't miss any units.
Right, like if you need the AP US history, European history, or world history prep course curriculum, feel free to send me a WeChat message. I will just forward it to you. It's all ready in the WeChat articles. There's a question from a parent. What prep should the students do for the AP exam?
This class, I think. Like the most important thing is to make sure the essay is good, to make sure the essay is sound. I've seen plenty of curriculums from teachers that are excellent. They do excellent writing teaching. Like whatever teacher you have at your school is, I'm sure, perfectly capable. But I mean, some of them don't have much of a plan for the writing. They kind of have the kids start the writing in the second semester and they haven't even been doing any writing yet. So the most important thing is to start the writing. And I also use the official AP guidelines. I don't have any conflicts with like a local curriculum, like a state or school district curriculum so I'm only focused on the AP. I have no focus on anything having to do with the high school curriculum or anything like that. So our entire focus is on the AP requirements in all cases to get a 5. The whole purpose is to get a 5. There's no other grade. Our entire purpose is the AP test 5. So we don't have to worry as much about, what the school requires for anything. We can make sure that it's AP College Board approved, which simplifies things quite a bit, actually.
So some students, they actually take AP US history and AP language in the same year. So does taking AP language help with a push?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say vice versa. Maybe it's better to do Lang and then the history ones, but because there's less going the other way. But yeah, like taking Lang and then doing history is a great way of doing it. And I mean, that's a lot of writing if you're doing Lang and history courses during the same year. Like I kind of feel for the students who might be doing that, but they do overlap. And I'm sure anybody who's already taking it, if anybody's already taking Lang, then you already know how to write an argumentative essay, or you should be learning how to write an argumentative essay. And basically the history essays are just a evidence-based essay and an argumentative essay with the topic of whatever subject area it is, whether it's Euro or APUSH or world or whatever it happens to be. They're they're weighty APs. Some APs don't, like, no matter what your focus is, if you're more of a STEM focused student or you're going into a STEM course, having a history course or a AP Lang course on there will show that you know how to write. And colleges, like, just like Jan said, that's one of their major concerns, because that's, I don't know, I'm sure everybody, I don't know if anybody remembers, if there's any parents watching, that, like, you know, college is writing. It doesn't matter what course you're taking, you're going to have to write papers all the time. And AP Lang, AP History, these are the kind of papers that you got to write. If you take my classes, that's one of my skill developments that I'd really like to be able to impart on students, is the ability to, if a random person just came up to you on the street and was like, I'll give you $1,000 if you write a passable 5-paragraph essay right now based on any random topic, that is where you should be by the end of taking my classes. You could just pop out a 5-paragraph essay in 20 minutes tops, like, no problem. It'll take more than that for history classes, but yeah, the ease of writing is a major focus for my classes.
So for AP Lang, do you also provide materials to students?
Yeah, there's a lot fewer materials to provide for Lang, but yeah, we've got plenty of practice essays and prompts and things like that. AP Lit is kind of like, AP Lit is almost like if you go a different direction from Lang. So if you have Lang as kind of a core, like, skill set, history is going in the nonfiction direction, and then Lit is going in the fiction direction. So AP Lit, you have to do a lot of analysis of poetry and excerpts, and AP Lit is very similar to, like, the SAT reading section, but with a greater focus on, like, the components of the literature. If I wouldn't recommend Lit to people who are not readers. Like, I wouldn't recommend Lit to someone who's going into STEM in college, but because unless you're a reader, like if you're a natural reader, like you enjoy reading, take Lit. It's not that hard, honestly. But if you struggle with reading comprehension, then you might be getting yourself in a little bit over your head, because you really do got to analyze, like, line by line, and the essays you got to write really got to go into detail. But if you're already planning on taking Lang and you are a reader, or you're thinking about doing humanities, AP Lit is a great direction to go, because it's basically a college lit course in terms of literary analysis and things like that.